Yo, what's good? Cheers everyone for joining. Um, yeah, so I'll just go right in and sort of explain a little bit about myself. I've been making music for the past, I'd say 12-ish years. I'm 25 now. I started making music when I was 12, 13. Um, I always had an interest in sort of electronic music, although I didn't start making UK garage. When I initially started making music, it was drum and bass. That was sort of my first inning into electronic music. Did that for a couple of years. Kind of wanted to explore other stuff, so I started making sort of instrumental hip hop, kind of post dubsteppy stuff. Um, Kind of hop from genre to genre over the years until I stuck with UK Garage a couple of years ago. Um, so broadly, UK Garage. I'm gonna talk today about drums. And for the first bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about 4x4 drums and two-step drums. So when I talk about UK garage, um, people from the UK will know this, or people who are into UK garage will know this. You have sort of two types, very broadly. One of them being 4x4, which just follows sort of more houseier style, sort of the regular stuff. And then two-step garage, which is more syncopated, takes more an influence from breaks, um, very broken drum beats. The kind of stuff I make, it kind of really depends on the kind of feel I'm going for. For the past couple of years, I've been focusing more on 4x4 garage. I've had a big influence from stuff like French house, old US garage, which is more in the vein of sort of Chicago house. Um, yeah, so I've loaded up some drums here. It's pretty regular drums. These are sort of the drums I'd use in a normal track, or similar to the drums I'd use in a normal track. I've got my kick here, got my clap here. Ooh, first clap, second clap, open hi hat, closed hi hat. Ooh, that is not closed hi hat. Let me just duplicate this. Make this shorter. That's my closed hi hat. And here I've got drum rack, which just got some percussions in it. So yeah, let's get started on sort of a regular, sort of typical 4x4 beat. You know, I like working in MIDI, by the way. I know a lot of people are unsure about whether to work with MIDI or put audio straight into the playlist. I find personally that using MIDI gives me a lot more control over what I'm doing. Um, because if I have a kick sample here, I can shorten it or whatever. And it also helps me with the swing because that's what makes a drum pattern cohesive. And I know you can do swing within the playlist as well, but I kind of prefer how it works when you're doing it just in MIDI. Um, cool. So with this kick, I'm just gonna make a 4x4 pattern. Right. Um, when I pick my drum samples, I try to pick drum samples that have character, meaning, you know, having a really tight, low punching kick drum is cool. But if there's information in the mid range or in the high range that gives it a bit more than just a thud, that sounds quite cool too. So let's go ahead and do a little closed hi hat. Just going to put one on every offbeat. So I'm just gonna fill in my claps here. Same here. Give this a little bit of quantize. Oh. So this is just a regular boring ass house loop, essentially. I've gone with a tempo of 130 BPM. That's kind of the tempo I usually like to work at. You can go up anywhere to 140 with UK Garage, and as slow as 120. But what makes a UK Garage track, in my opinion, is a swing. So now the swing is sort of the relationship that, in this case, all the 16th notes have with each other. So the swing is the difference between a track sounding like this which obviously sounds cool, but for UKG inflection, I'll usually go into the groove pool on swing here. And because it's the 16th notes I want to swing, I'll pick one of these. Now, the higher you go here, the more swung it will be. So I can go as low as this here, which sounds pretty close to the original, or all the way up here, which kind of sounds a bit much. So I'm going to go somewhere in the middle here. Is that right? It is really important that whatever you do, however many sort of percussive elements, hi-hats, etc. you have, that everything is swinging at the same rate. You don't want to pick this swing envelope for the hi-hats and then pick this swing envelope for the percussion. Uniformity is really, really important. And that goes for your drums as well as for your samples and your melodies, your bass lines, etc., etc. Right. Let's go over here to my percussion. So for my percussion, I like to use drum racks just because I find it easy to build patterns when I've got all my percussion in drum racks. And I like to process them all the same, which is handy if you've got them all in one drum rack. And then I like to keep the kicks and claps and the snares, etc., all separate because I like to process them all separately. Anyway, so I've got this here. It's kind of very boomy. This little snare, which I'll use as a shuffle. There's kind of a shuffle too from a Geotheory percussion pack. Another shuffle. And this is just like a little thing I'll add over the top just to fill it out a little bit more. Okay, let's go. By the way, I've got a MIDI keyboard here right in front of me with which I'll be sort of going through my samples and make sure it's on the right. There you go. Change this clap around a little bit. Oh, good. So I'm going to start off with some like shuffles just to give it that UKG feel. I'm going to play them in without swing, and then I'm going to add the swing later on. I'll show you what I mean. Okay. Let me just duplicate this. Make this wider. Let's move this down. So I'm just going to quantize everything. I'm going to pick the same swing profile. Now that I've got the swing selected, it will automatically swing all the percussion I add in. Shorten this snare a little bit because it sounds a bit too long. I don't know which one was this. Yeah. You just fade it out a little bit more so it sounds a bit tighter. That's kind of one of the things about making UKG. You're gonna see as I work on, everything's gonna start sounding a little bit tighter because everything sounds a bit splashy at the minute. But one of the things that I find makes UKG, so one of the things that I feel like you can tell, you know, this is a UKG track, is everything sounds really nice and tight. I'm gonna shorten this clap here as well. Just by using the sort of fader here on the sampler, can instantly just make everything sound a lot tighter. Right, let's work around velocities a little bit. So I just drew in these hi-hats here, but they sound a bit too robotic because there's no velocity in them at all. Meaning I'm going to keep the offbeat hi-hat at normal volume, and then the other hi-hats, I'm just going to make a little bit quieter. It's a bit less exhausting to listen to. That's one thing with drums like this. You want to avoid having all the drums at the same volume. Gives it a bit more of a human feel. So, and it accentuates the swing a lot more as well. Let me just mark all of these. So I'm holding down Shift to mark all of these individually. And I can just drag them down a bit more. So that sounds a bit better. Let me fade this kick as well a little bit. I want me to zoom out there. Now I'm going to add sort of the odd open hi-hat just to make it a little bit more interesting. There you go. It's a bit loud. Turn that down. I love using 707s for hi-hats. The 707 is an amazing drum machine. If you use Ableton and you just type 707 into Ableton here at the top, you can go in all results. You'll find the core kit, which is provided when you download Ableton. I use a lot of claps from the 707 as well. It's just a very, very clean, very digital clap. The hi-hats, the open and the closed ones, cut through so nicely as well. Oh, that was very loud, but oh, actually you wouldn't have been able to hear that. But let me just load the actual core kit in here. So I will typically use this hi-hat, this rim on occasion as well. This comes in really handy too sometimes if you just like shorten it as percussion. And this clap is just the most amazing clap. Anyway, let me get rid of that. So anyway, yeah, so this open hi-hat here, I've just loaded it in. I've turned up the glue, which is just basically compression, up halfway. It sounds a little bit, but the compression just adds a little bit of body to it. Low cut it by a little bit so you don't have too much of that low end coming through because it's a hi-hat after all. Okay. Put up the attack as well, because the start of the sample is quite harsh, and even if you just turn the attack up a bit, it still sounds sharp, but it doesn't sound like too much. Then here you have the decay, which I usually like to automate throughout the track. But for this, I think something length like this sounds pretty nice. Just quantize that quickly. Make that decay a little bit longer. This is a kind of very rough start as to how I would start my my drums. Usually from here, I'll go ahead and kind of replace samples and whatnot. But what I'm going to do next, I'm just going to try and layer some of these sounds and maybe switch some of them out. Now, usually, I mean, the reason I'm starting with drums this time is just because it's easier to get a feel for what the genre is supposed to sound like with the drums. But actually, the way I'd start a track is with a sample of some sort or some chords and sort of build around that. And that way I'd get a feel for what the drums are meant to sound like. But now that we're just starting on drums, I'm just going to build on them a little bit and see what else I can add. Right, I've got some, I've got another drum rack here, which I actually had loaded up for the two-step drums I'll be working on in a bit. But these are some sort of just random sounds from this sample pack one of my mates sent me. Some really organic sounding stuff, which I'm going to try and chop up and use. For stuff like this, you can use the drum rack. Sometimes it works better if for random samples like this, you kind of put them into the playlist, just because you can then warp sounds, which I find really, really handy to do. So the sample pack is called Names for Girls, I think. There we go. Let me just quickly put some into the playlist. So I'm aware you can't hear this, but I'll be quick. Which was it? Oh, there we go. Oh, boom. Okay, let's have a listen. So this could, I might actually just add this one to the this percussion drum rack here. This could be cool to use. Let's see, let's go back into the, oh, not bad. Make sure I have media arrangement overdub turned on. That way I can record over an existing MIDI pattern. So this was, I'm just going to use this as an extra offbeat hi-hat because I think it sounds quite cool. Sounds a little bit unusual, but I think it makes sense, and it will sound quite nice as well when tomorrow we have a look at samples and I can kind of tune it to be in the same key. I think that will sound pretty nice. Okay. Let me speed this up a little bit more. Kind of want to get more of a UKG feel, and it feels a little bit slow at the minute. This sounds cool, but I reckon we need some more stuff happening shuffle wise, just to get it grooving a little bit more. So I'm going to use this little snare here. I'm going to make sure it's a little bit tighter. We're getting there. It's not sounding bad, but I do think I'm gonna add another kick to this pattern here. This kick is sounding cool, but I reckon what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out the low frequencies slightly because I like the roominess of the kick in the mid frequencies, but I don't think the sub is quite enough. So there's this one kick I love to use. Yeah, you hear that? That's a loud ass kick. I'm just I'm gonna copy the MIDI, turn this down a bit. So you see what I mean about the character of the kick, because this sounds really nice and roomy, and this on its own sounds a bit dull. Can sound cool within the right context, but together it just sounds fatter. This clap needs to sound a bit tighter as well. This first one here. I haven't done this so far, but one thing I do like to do when I start with something that's as loud as the drum loops or just the drums, I like to make everything just a little bit quieter, so there's more space for you to do stuff in the headroom. And also that way you're kind of giving your ears a bit more of a break, especially when you're working on headphones like I am right now. Cool. So that's it's kind of a basic drum loop here. Just going to copy that over and then kind of do some variations here and there. I'll take the clap out of the first bit. One thing with perks that I will tell you, shuffles and percussion, is that there is such a thing as too much. While you do want to, you know, make sure that your track is really, really swingy and nice and, low slung, you don't want to overfill your drums. And I think that's one thing that tends to happen when you start with a drum loop, is that you tend to overfill the drums. As we progress this week, you'll probably hear me or see me taking out certain elements just because it sounds like too much. And especially when you're trying to really fill out a track, you want the main elements to not jar. You don't want them to hurt your ears. So you'll probably hear me turn stuff down or take stuff out completely. It's just that right at the start when I make drums, I like for there to be quite a lot of stuff happening. I reckon it's better to start with a little bit more so you can take stuff out later on. Anyway, that was it for the first bit. The second bit, I kind of wanted to start with a two-step drum loop, because I reckon the track we'll be working on this week will have both sections, so 4x4 bit and a two-step bit. That way I can kind of explain to you the differences and how to approach, or how I approach personally, how I approach both styles, even sort of within the same track. So I'm gonna go ahead and mute the 4x4 drums. What's happening here? Oh, okay. I've got a similar sort of drum setup here. Let me just quickly rename this. Closed hi-hat. So yeah, for sort of two-steppy stuff, you classically you sort of think Burial, sort of future garage stuff, stuff that sort of leans more on breaks. Um, there's a whole lot of stuff you can sort of do in this style, but I'm gonna go for just a really simple UKG beat. So I'll go ahead and record in kick loop. Very sloppily played in. Quantized. Again, I like to, as soon as I've done the kick, I like to put in the hi-hat because I use that as sort of a point of reference for any other rhythm I'm doing. Let me turn this down a little bit. Cool. Nope. There we go. Again here, okay, so there's a different room I had loaded in here. By the way, when it comes to drums, etc., I like to use Splice. Splice is great. There's no particular drum pack I have all my drums from. It's just stuff I've kind of collected over the years. I mean, I have been producing for like over a decade now, so I've got all sorts of sort of drum packs that I use. But I like to condense my favorite ones down into folders, which you can't see now because I haven't organized my folders in a long time because I'm very, very bad at organizing my stuff. So I usually just type in whatever I need here and cycle through these and pick whatever I like. But I sort of do like to keep folders where I have my sort of go-to samples. But anyway, I'm going to shorten this a little bit to make it a little bit tighter. Come on, one shot, fade out. Yeah, just gonna go for that really, really regular ass garage beat. Let's try and do some percussion. Let's make sure I'm on the correct octave here on my keyboard. I need to shorten this big thing here because it could actually come in handy later on. Anyway. So I'm just going to quantize all these and then apply the swing envelope here. Right. So I was just reading the chat, see if anyone's asked any questions, but cool. Hang on, I wonder if Felix owns an external drum machine or just uses samples. I did not use external drum machines because I've always been sort of an in the box person. I started making music on FL Studio when I was 13, and I didn't have any access to sort of any MIDI keyboards or anything like that. So I've always sort of worked in the box, and I feel very comfortable doing it this way. I've had some amazing sessions with producers who have a lot of board equipment, and I admire that sort of workflow a lot. But personally, I kind of prefer working this way. Although I reckon in the next couple of years that's going to change, just because I want to find sort of new ways to experiment with drums and stuff like that. But anyway, let's go back to this percussion here. Just want to make sure these are all cool. Okay. Cool. So I just played that in without any swing, just so it makes it easy to quantize. And then, ooh. Oh, that's the issue. I didn't quantize my rim here. That's why it sounds so weird. Okay. I think that sounds pretty cool. I'm going to shorten this just a little bit. Go one shot here and fade out. I might move this one here so it doesn't interfere with that one. I might just move it in here. No, that doesn't sound cool. Just gonna leave this one out for now. Shorten this little percussive element here. I'm going to replace this sample here. It's not fitting in with what I want here. What I want for this drum loop is I want sharpness, and I'm not getting sharpness from this. It just sounds like a splash of white noise. So let's see what I've got. Again, apologies. I'm aware you can't hear this, but I won't be a sec. This is what 90%, I'm doing 90% of the time, just going through my very, very unorganized sample base and looking for stuff to put in my tracks. Okay. Some cool sounding stuff here. Oh, that sounds cool. Okay. I'm gonna just mend that here. I'm gonna shorten that a little bit more. In fact, okay. In fact, I'm gonna put it into its own, just because I want to process it on its own.